It started like any other day in his quiet neighborhood, until one phone call changed everything. A white woman, suspicious of a black man standing outside a house, did what she thought was the right thing. She called the police. She described him as a suspicious person, someone who didn't belong. Officers arrived within minutes, ready to question the man. But what happened next left everyone stunned. The man wasn't just another stranger passing through. He was the new police chief, moving into his own home. As the officers realized who he was, the mood shifted. The woman, still standing on her porch, watched in shock. Did she just call the cops on her own police chief? This story isn't just about a mistaken call. It's about perception, bias, and the assumptions people make every day. And as the new chief stood there, looking at the officers, one question remained: what happens next? For a moment, there was silence. The officers exchanged glances, their hands still near their radios. The woman on the porch frowned, confused by their hesitation. The man, calm but firm, reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his badge. "I'm Chief Daniels," he said, his voice steady, "and this is my home." The officers stiffened. The name clicked instantly. They had read about him, the newly appointed police chief, but never expected to meet him like this. The woman's face turned pale. She took a step back, her mind racing. Chief Daniels exhaled, looking at the officers, then up at the woman who had called them. He had faced moments like this before, too many times. But now, standing in front of his own house, the weight of it all felt different. No one spoke. The officers awaited his next words. The woman gripped her phone, and the chief. He was already thinking about what to say next. The air felt heavier now, thick with unspoken words. Chief Daniels studied the woman's expression. Was it regret, embarrassment, or just shock? She shifted uncomfortably, gripping her phone like it might protect her from the situation she had just created. One of the officers cleared his throat. "Chief, we didn't realize." "I know," Daniels interrupted, his voice controlled but firm. He wasn't angry. He was just tired. Tired of moments like this. Tired of being questioned in spaces where he belonged. The woman finally spoke, her voice uncertain. I didn't know," she stammered. "I just saw someone standing there," and her words trailed off, but Daniels knew what she meant. She saw a black man and assumed the worst. From across the street, a few neighbors peeked through their curtains, watching the scene unfold. Daniels could feel their eyes on him. The question now wasn't just what he would say next. It was what this moment would mean for all of them. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. The woman shifted from foot to foot, avoiding Chief Daniels' gaze. The officers still stood awkwardly, unsure whether to stay or leave. A few more neighbors had stepped onto their porches now, whispering among themselves. Word was spreading fast. Daniels took a slow breath, keeping his emotions in check. He had spent years working to build trust between police and the communities they served. And yet, here he was, on the receiving end of the very suspicion he had fought to change. The woman finally looked up at him. I wasn't trying to cause trouble," she said weakly. I didn't recognize you." Daniels studied her for a moment. "Did you ever think to ask before calling the police?" His question was calm, but it carried weight. The woman swallowed hard, but before she could answer, a voice from the crowd spoke up. "That's our new police chief," an older man asked, stepping forward. His tone wasn't just surprised, it was skeptical. Daniels turned toward him, sensing something deeper beneath his words. The real test wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Chief Daniels turned to the older man, reading the doubt in his eyes. The tension in the crowd thickened. Some neighbors had their arms crossed, others whispered among themselves. The woman who had called the police glanced at the man, as if looking for reassurance. Daniels had seen this before, when people weren't just surprised, but resistant. "So, you're really the new chief?" the man asked, his voice laced with something between skepticism and challenge. Daniels met his gaze, That's right. The man gave a slow nod, then looked toward the officers still standing by. Funny, he muttered. We've never had a chief like you before. Daniels knew exactly what he meant, but before he could respond, one of the officers' radios crackled to life. A call was coming through, urgent. The officer hesitated, glancing between Daniels and his partner. Then, just as quickly, a second voice rang out from the crowd. Wait, I know him, a woman said suddenly. She stepped forward, her eyes widening as recognition set in. Chief Daniels, from Chicago, right? The shift was immediate. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The skepticism turned to curiosity. And just like that, the situation had changed again. But whether for better or worse, Daniels wasn't sure yet. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. The woman who recognized Chief Daniels stepped closer, her expression shifting from surprise to something else, respect. You worked on that big case a few years back, she said. The one that cleaned up those bad cops. Daniels gave a small nod. That's right. The older man who had been skeptical crossed his arms, his face unreadable. So, what brings you here? Why take this job? Daniels let the question hang in the air for a moment. Then he looked around at the people watching him, some still wary, some waiting for an explanation. Because I believe in change, he said simply. And I believe it starts in places just like this. The woman on the porch swallowed hard, guilt flashing across her face. I misjudged you, she admitted. I didn't expect. She stopped herself, realizing there was no good way to finish that sentence. Daniels nodded, understanding what she couldn't say. That's the problem, he said, his voice even. People see what they expect, not what's real. Just then, the officer's radio crackled again. We need backup now. Situation escalating. The officers exchanged a glance, then turned to Daniels. You're the chief, one of them said. What do we do? Daniels took a deep breath. This was it, his first real test. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, taking control. The crowd watched in silence as he made the call. And in that moment, the neighborhood didn't just see a black man standing in his driveway. They saw their new police chief in action. The officers nodded and hurried to their squad car, following Chief Daniels' lead. The crowd, once tense with uncertainty, now watched with quiet understanding. The woman on the porch lowered her phone, her expression softening. The older man who had questioned Daniels gave him a slow nod, as if seeing him in a new light. As the patrol car pulled away, the street felt different. Not just quieter, but changed. Daniels turned back to his house, taking it all in, the place he would now call home. He knew earning the full trust of this community wouldn't happen overnight. But maybe, just maybe, this moment was a start. The woman took a hesitant step forward. Welcome to the neighborhood, she said. Daniels gave her a small smile. Thanks, I think I'll like it here. With that, he stepped inside, closing the door behind him, ready for whatever came next.